All right, hello everyone. Susan Storm here from Psychology Junkie, and I'm joined by my good friend and fellow type nerd, Denzel Mensa. We are so sorry to be 11 minutes late. The computer I was using had all kinds of issues, so I just switched to my very old laptop, which is why the quality is not great on my end. But if you bear with us, we're going to have a great talk today. We're going to be talking about INTJ fictional characters. Now, it's hard to type fictional characters because we can't actually sit across from any of them and conduct a profiling session. But as you watch these shows, some of these characters are based on TV shows, some are based on books, some are based on movies, and you'll see patterns of the INTJ type throughout their performances and throughout their stories. So we're really excited today to dive into those characters. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Let me give Denzel a chance to introduce himself for anyone who's new to watching the stream. Denzel, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Denzel Mensa. I'm an ENFJ, 911 social sexual in the Enneagram system. I'm a life, personal development, and relationship coach. And I also have my own YouTube channel where I talk about personality psychology, philosophy, anything interpersonal related, spirituality, religion, all of that. And yeah, I have coaching services, as I mentioned. You can find those at denzelmensa.com. Um, but yeah, I'm excited to be here today. I think this series has been pretty dope. So if you waited for this, then I really feel like it'll be worth your time. We already did ENTJ a few weeks ago. We had a little bit of technical difficulties with the copyright stuff, but we're getting that figured out, and now it's back up and running. So we're making our way through this as we move on, and we have clips once again for today's personality types, and I think that you'll really enjoy it. Yeah, I think that this is all I have to say for right now.
Yeah, we do want to give a warning. So this is technically an educational video because we're talking about the INTJ personality type. So we are following all of YouTube's guidelines, but sometimes when we play these very short video clips, the YouTube bots or whatever are like, "Oh, this is copyrighted content," and they'll block the stream occasionally until it realizes there's not a problem and then lets the stream continue. And then usually after the stream takes place, I have to fill out some information with YouTube saying, hey, we are following the guidelines, and then they'll release the claim and release the video. So if you're watching on YouTube and you notice that the video goes out all of the sudden, it's because that has happened. Now, hopefully, it won't happen, but it might. It happened, I think, 2 times on our last stream for just a couple of minutes. So if you notice that the stream goes out, just bear with us for a minute or two, and we will be back on. And then what will happen is in a couple of days when those claims are dropped, because they'll realize that this is an educational video, they will go ahead and release all those pauses in the video so you can see the complete thing. We think it's really important to have the clips to help demonstrate these types in action. So we wanted to be able to continue doing this. Now, one technique you might want to try if this happens is you can head over to my Psychology Junkie Facebook page. It's actually under Susan Storm, and that stream doesn't tend to get disrupted as much. So if you're having troubles with YouTube, you can always switch over to the Facebook stream and watch it from there, and you may be able to see the whole thing without a problem because the Facebook isn't usually blocking it.
Yeah, maybe at
But
some point when one of the clips are playing, you can put the link to that in the description, or not the description, but the comments, the live chat.
yes, that would be a good idea. So I could do that right now. Why don't I do well, first, I'll do that in a minute. First, let's go ahead and talk about INTJs, because I feel like it's good to have an overview of the type before we get right into exploring the fictional characters. So, and also, this is a live Q&A. So if you're watching and if you have a question, feel free to drop it in the comments in the chat. We would be more than happy to try to answer that question. We want you to feel like you're part of this and not just a spectator. We're in this with you, and we are happy to have you here. So the INTJ personality, here is a glimpse of their function stack. So cognitive functions are essentially the mental tools that you have at your disposal at all times. And we all use all of the cognitive functions, but INTJs have this specific stack. And what you'll see is that they are dominant introverted intuitives. That's why introverted intuition shows up the largest in their and the first in their function stack. So, as introverted intuitives, INTJs are highly aware of patterns. They're very aware of ripple effects and implications. They also are big picture people, and they tend to understand how one thing will impact something way further down the road. They are interested in concepts, in theories, and the abstract parts of life. They also use a function called extroverted thinking, which is about objective logic, empirical reasoning, excuse me, and organizing and structuring the world in order to achieve goals and objectives. Now, we're not going to get really deep into the INTJ's cognitive function stack right now, but if you want to explore more about that, we did do a live, we have done many live streams about the cognitive functions if you want to learn more about that. So I have a quote here from Linda Behrens, who is a psychologist and also someone who's done a lot of studies and writing about type. She says the theme of the INTJ is strategizing, envisioning, and masterminding. Their talents lie in defining goals, creating detailed plans, and outlining contingencies. They have a drive. They drive themselves to master what is needed to make progress towards goals. She calls them a chart the course type. They always have their eyes on the path and whatever that path is to achieve their long-term vision. In their close relationships, INTJs want an ultimate connective experience. They are very private, showing affection only to those close to them. Because communicating emotion feels embarrassing, they want some structured way to interact and communicate, to leave no room for uncertainty. This can make them look more traditional than they really are. So here, what a lot of what you'll see when you look at INTJ fictional characters online are these very cold, power-hungry individuals. It's kind of the curse of being an NT type in the movie, TV, book world. Is a lot of people type these power-hungry villains as NTs. And NTJs do care about the relationships, they do have values, and they do care a lot about integrity, but they aren't often going to show it in the verbal, affectionate way that other types, especially feeling types, are better at in many cases. A lot of times they do feel self-conscious expressing their feelings, and so they have a very structured way of approaching life because they feel more comfortable expressing their emotions and their feelings and their affection in this structured, predictable way. So they have a chart the course interaction style. Again, that's via Linda Behrens's interaction styles program. And these are some ways that you can see them interact with the world. They create and envision a plan. They push for constant progression towards goals. They limit small talk. They hate interruptions. They have a very systematic approach to life and a thorough and detailed manner. They are straightforward and they tune out potential distractions in order to focus. So this is when you're interacting with an INTJ, these are some of the things you'll notice about them. And these are also things that we will see in the video clips that we're going to be watching today, is this tendency to shut out distractions, to focus, that very focused, methodical, driven, planful approach to life. Intuition. INTJs are dominant intuitives. They notice powerful insights into what is likely to happen. They spot ripple effects, implications, and potentials. They often just know things about people and situations. Many times, an entire solution to a problem will show up seemingly out of the blue. Reading behind the scenes and spotting patterns is something they excel at. All right, so that's an overview of the INTJ type. And Denzel, do you want to add anything before we get right into our fictional characters?
No, not yet. I think that you covered everything very well.
All right, awesome. So our first character is the beloved L. Lawliet. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his last name properly, from the anime Death Note. It's a very popular character. Elle is a world-renowned detective who takes on the challenge of finding the mass murderer Kira. Elle is highly secretive and only communicates with the world through his assistant Watari. He uses subterfuge, misinformation, disinformation, and an analytical knowledge of human nature to help lure a suspected murderer into a false sense of security and possibly make him carelessly overconfident. So, Denzel, you are more familiar with this character than I am because it has been many, many ages since I watched Death Note, and he was your choice for INTJ. So I'm going to give you a moment to explain your thoughts on L and how he demonstrates the INTJ type.
Yeah, sure. So without spoiling the best that I can, the premise of Death Note is Light Yagami. Coincidentally, I type him as an ENTJ, even though some people might type him as an INTJ. And that's, watch last week's stream or a few weeks stream, last stream, to be able to get that clarified. Light Yagami picks up the Death Note, and it's pretty much this tool that allows him to be able to kill people just by writing down their name. And L works in the police, and he's like, a major detective and everything like that. He's never lost a case. And so essentially, the whole show becomes this almost like ultimate chess match between an ENTJ, like Yagami, and an INTJ, L. Again, I know that a lot of people usually type L as INTP because he's quirky in the sense that, like, if you watch the show, you see like he sits in a weird position and he has a lot of the stereotypical quirky things that we associate usually with INTP. But when we look at like when we watch the show at a cognitive function level, then you see that L is constantly using introverted intuition, not extroverted intuition, and he's constantly using extroverted thinking rather than introverted thinking, like the INTP would be using. And so some of the ways that he demonstrates this is he's constantly anticipating what Kira's next move is going to be, and then how he can intercept that, and then even setting traps for Kira. And then Kira, who's like Yagami, is also doing the exact same thing as an ENTJ. He's like, okay, what will he do? And then throughout the show, they're often talking so much about how they are so similar to each other, which it makes sense because they share the same cognitive functions and they're just introverted, extroverted parts of one another. And so, yeah, L, he's very to himself. He's very private. You can see his tertiary FI come out a lot, and especially toward the latter part of the show, you see a lot of that like come out. But you also see how much he has to do the TE thing. Like, yes, this hurts, or yes, this is even somewhat unethical in a way, but we need to do this. We need to carry out this mission in order to actually accomplish what's the bigger picture at hand. And that's the best that I can do without spoiling it. But yeah, we're going to see a few clips here that'll exemplify that a lot.
Yeah, I think that was an amazing description, Denzel. He did really good.
Well,
And
thank you.
because I agree with you, I mean, initially I even typed him as INTP, and partially because it had been a couple of years since I'd seen it, and so I was trying to pull from memory, which my memory isn't the absolute best. But
Mhm.
when you were explaining it, I was realizing yes, when throughout the entire series, he's always narrowing down probabilities and forming um, predictions about very specific things happening rather than exploring multiple possibilities. So in
Yes.
INTP, like you were saying, they're going to multiply possibilities and have many different rabbit trails they're exploring at one time. And whereas Elle's character is constantly narrowing them down, zeroing in on one thing, and that's more of an introverted, intuitive approach. And you will see a lot of times in the type community, we look at people who portray themselves in a more idiosyncratic, quirky way in their dress or their body language or whatever, and we go, that must be a perceiver. I'm not exactly sure where that came from entirely. I think there's this idea that judges are always really like structured and organized and always I mean, yes, they do prefer structure and organization, but when it comes to their physical appearance, they don't always have to wear everything matching all the time. In fact, for many INTJs, they do have a more idiosyncratic style
Yes. SC
because of
inferior.
their yeah, because of the having inferior extroverted sensing, but also introverted feeling in their stack, which is more of an individualistic, um, gives them a more individualistic quality. It's like a lot. It's very common for INTJs to have this. I'm my own person. I march to the beat of my own drum. I dress the way I want to dress. I don't have to fit with all these social norms. So they don't always look like the stereotypical I don't know, like professionally dressed person. And sometimes that's how people expect them to look. So we have a clip here of Elle. I'm going to go ahead and put it up. And to give you some context, he is having a tennis match with Light Yagami. And you can see where they're both using introverted intuition and extroverted thinking to some degree to anticipate their opponent's motivations and their strategy throughout the match. So let me go ahead and put that up here and get it started, and hopefully YouTube will let it play.
Head. There's no way this tennis match will deepen our friendship. This is a token gesture, an elaborate act we'll go through so we can say we're closer. Because I wanted to play tennis with you, you'll assume that I'm preparing to take a step closer, laying the groundwork to get to know you better. And then you're going to try and trap me by getting me to say something that only Kira would know. However, I'm sure you'll tell me you need to know if you can trust me first. And of course, the only way to win your trust will be to share what I know about Kira. If you want me to discuss Kira with you, it only makes sense that I'd want to ask for proof that you are in charge of the investigation. And more importantly, that you are really Elle as you say you are. So it goes without saying that the first thing you're going to want from me is some kind of confirmation from a third party that you really are Elle, which means we'll have to go to Task Force headquarters. In all things, one cannot win with defense alone. To win, you must attack!
All right, so I am not sure if was that choppy for everyone or just me?
It was like a little bit choppy on my end.
Okay, it's probably because I'm hosting it on my beat up old laptop, which I was hoping not to use. So my computer, I apologize. My computer is a bit on the slow side. I was hoping to use a better one, but it was having problems.
Do you want
So
to
yeah,
try to forward me the drive, or invite me to the drive, and then maybe I can try to share it from my end? We don't have to.
Yeah, I'm trying to think whether that would work better. I don't know. I may not be able to do that right now because that would
Yeah,
take
that's
a while to get the whole process back and forth. But hopefully you can still get the gist of what was happening in that scene, even though it's a bit slow, and a little bit choppy. And I'm going to also just like close out of any extraneous programs. I don't think I have anything else open though. So you can see through that scene where Light Yagami and Elle are constantly analyzing their opponent's motives. What are they doing this? Why should I win this match or throw this match in order to reach my ultimate strategy, which is to potentially fool for Light Yagami, it's to fool Elle, and for Elle, it's to find out Light Yagami. And so you can see that they're strategizing this entire time, which amazingly they're also able to do while playing tennis, which that's amazing to me. Any thoughts, Denzel, on that?
Yeah, I think that it was really interesting to see how they were both. First off, again, the nature of SC and NI as a polarity is extroverted sensing, which is the INTJ's inferior function, and the ENTJ, Light Yagami's tertiary function. We're talking about both just because you're seeing both of them here, so it helps you like distinguish. Extroverted sensing is all about knowing, like being in the moment and looking at things exactly for what it is and everything, and kind of assessing what's happening like right now. And then the introverted intuition puts meaning behind it. So as they were in the moment, playing tennis and all of that, then the introverted intuition from both of them is like, okay, what's going on over here? Now it's like reading into the situation. It's like, okay, right now we are not just playing tennis. Maybe to the outside, from the extroverted sensing view, it's like they're just playing tennis and they're just going very hard. But right now, this is more than just tennis. This is actually a way to be able to identify this and this, do this. And so should I lose? So they're like anticipating like not only the opponent's like next move, but also what they should do in addition to that. So it's almost like a chess game in the tennis game, but it's all mentally being done. And then eventually, I think one of the ways that you see how Light has tertiary SE over inferior SE, whereas like L has the inferior SE, is because Light ends the tennis match by saying, well, you can't just win by defense alone. you have to attack, which is more of like a TESE kind of edge that an ENTJ might have over like an INTJ in that way. But yeah, I think that throughout that video, you can see how they both are like getting in the minds of each other. And if anything, L is the one who actually planned the tennis match. And he already knew how good Light was at tennis, but he himself also knew how good he was at tennis. And it's like a whole kind of like, yeah, let's see what you got kind of thing. But it's not about tennis. It's about something way more grand. And that's usually what NI is. It's like, it's not about what they're actually talking about. It's about something else. And yeah.
Yeah, the actual physical activities that are going on are just a tool to serve the greater big picture vision that they have.
Yeah.
Thank
100%.
you. I'm hoping our next video clip won't be so choppy, but we'll see. Our next character is Huey Freeman from the Boondocks, and Huey is the main protagonist and narrator of the Boondocks. Politically sapient and borderline militant, Huey, being a self-described revolutionary left-wing radical, regularly reflects upon current events as well as the plight of African Americans as it relates to a greater American society. So, Denzel, again, this is a show I haven't seen as much of. I think I watched some of it with you, but you know more about. So, can you give us a little overview of why you think Huey might be an INTJ type?
Yeah. So for the record, Huey is funny enough. Huey is my #1 favorite INTJ fictional character of all time, and L is my second favorite, and they're like toe and toe right there. But Huey, he pretty much there's like 4 seasons of the Boondocks, and throughout the whole show, he's known to have a Cassandra complex, which for those who aren't aware of it, it's pretty much the idea that like he always is telling people what's going to happen, and he's trying to warn them or forewarn them like, hey, if you do this, this is what's going to go wrong. If you do this is what's going to go wrong. Guys, you have to listen to me. And he has an ESTP brother who's 2 years younger than him, and an ESFP grandfather who's his grandfather, and they both don't listen to him. And so he's constantly telling them, and they're like, Huey, shut up, shut up, shut up. Oh, we don't listen to you. And then at the end of the episode, they're like, Huey, why didn't you tell us that this was going to happen? Or sometimes they'll be like, Huey would be like, I told you guys it's going to happen. And then they're like, well, everybody knows, nobody listens to you, Huey, and stuff like that. And I think if Susan were using the last clip also that I sent you, then that one shows like there's a little bit of language in there, but it shows very well like an example of like almost NI Dom versus NI inferior. So like his ESTP brother, Riley, and him talking about the consequences of what's going to happen if Riley takes certain actions. And Riley's like, I don't want to hear about it because you're going to ruin the fun. But yeah, Huey, the thing about him is that even though he always has a scowl on his face, he cares so deeply. In fact, arguably, he cares more in the show than anybody else. But you would never think that just because I think he only has smiled like twice throughout the whole entire show. But it's because he's also like, he's a very serious guy, but he's always like thinking about how to help everyone else. He's always setting up systems in ways to help his brother and his grandfather, getting them out of trouble. They get themselves into the trouble that he has warned them about, and he's the one who's able to get them out, and they get themselves into more trouble. And he is frustrated all the time because he has this vision for the world, and he's like, man, like, I just wish that more people would listen to me. You know, I just wish that if they took my advice and stuff like that, then like this world would be a better place, which sometimes you usually think, oh, only FE users are like that. Like, no, NTJs, even INTJs, the evil INTJs, they want to make the world a better place too. But a lot of times they're just focusing more on a systemic approach to it.
Thank you, Denzel. That was awesome. I really need to watch more of the show because just the little bits I've seen, he's such an interesting, intense, visionary character, and it's also something, you know, as an INTJ myself, with a lot of SE DOMs or ESTPs in my life, I I definitely want to see the dynamic. Now, I wasn't able to get every clip that you sent me. I was able to get 2 of them because we ran out of time. But here are some clips to demonstrate Huey's INTJ nature. I think you'll really enjoy them. So let's go ahead and move to those. Hopefully they're not too lagging too much this time. We'll see.
The Tooth Fairy will be coming soon.
The Tooth Fairy?
Yep. Every time I lose a tooth, the Tooth Fairy takes it away and leaves $1 under my pillow.
There ain't no such thing as a Tooth Fairy.
Then who's leaving the money?
Probably your parents. They have both the cash and the access to your room.
Why would they lie to me?
Because the truth hurts, Jasmine. The world is a hard and lonely place, and nobody gets anything for free. And you want to know what else? One day, you and everyone you know is gonna die. Is it possible everything we see is a false reality? It's like Big Brother, The Matrix, whatever you want to call it. While we're watching each other, they're watching us. All the time. Obi-Wan Kenobi said, "Your eyes can deceive you. Don't trust them." It seems to be getting harder, distinguishing reality from the illusions people make for us, or from the ones we make for ourselves. I don't know. Maybe that's part of the plan, to make me think I'm crazy. It's working.
Okay, so again, sorry about the laggy nature of streaming those videos through here, but yeah, that is such a great example of how the INTJ mind works, and especially if you're an INTJ and you spend a lot of time around ESPs, which Huey does, you'll often feel like you're the downer of the group because you're like, I've had this big idea that, like he's saying, like maybe we're all just part of a what was the term, Denzel, he was saying? Part of a
Matrix.
Yeah, like the Matrix or a algorithm or something else. Like there's, and then he's like, well, we're all gonna die someday. That idea of that consciousness of the fact that we are all going to die someday, this big picture awareness of how short life is and what life is ultimately all about. That's something that's always on the mind, I feel like, of every NJ I know. But I feel like NFJs are a little bit more eloquent when it comes to talking about it in a way that doesn't immediately make people feel like they've been hit in the face with a brick. you know, because I know, like even Denzel and me, we've had conversations. I remember there were me and another INTJ and you and an INFJ. And we were talking about how we all think about death all the time. This was in Pittsburgh last year. And the NFJs can talk about it probably in a way that is more I don't know, pleasing to the ear, whereas the INTJs are more like Huey, like, well, we're all gonna die someday, you and everyone you love. And it reminded me of a conversation that I actually had once with my husband where I was saying, I'm always talking about death way too much. I'm like, sometimes I just think about, like, when I'm having a good time, like the fact that someday we'll both be dead and we'll literally never see each other again, or our children, or anyone we love. And I'm like, that's coming up so soon. And like, he's like, wow, you really know how to have a good time, things like that. And if you're an INTJ watching this, you've probably had similar types of experience, maybe not about death necessarily, but where you're bringing up these big picture revelations or epiphanies you've had about the nature of reality, and everyone just looks at you like you're crazy. So I think Huey is a great pick. Thank you, Denzel, for choosing him. Any more thoughts you wanted to add about him?
Yeah, well, I was just also going to add too, I think it's funny that our mutual INTJ friend, Lauren, she has a tattoo that literally is an hourglass. The top half is a flower and the bottom half is a skull. And on it is inscribed Memento Mori, which pretty much means remember one day you will die. And it's like, well, there you thanks for the constant reminder every time I look on your shoulder.
It's so true. I've asked I've asked more people than I should. Do you like think about death very much? And so many people are like, no. Why would I think about that? And I'm like, how do so many people go through life not thinking about death all the time? It's this big eternal thing that's waiting for us. But anyways, I'm not going to get on into that, but I think Huey demonstrates that kind of.
I was going to say, I do think, but you let me know what you think. I just really wanted to also try to share that last clip because I really do feel like it. Yeah. But do you
The problem
think
is I don't have it on here.
I was gonna share it from underneath.
Oh, You mean like just send the link?
Yeah, I already have the link down. Like if you look down underneath, if you just like opened it, then I just like share it, like screenshot.
Oh, okay. I see it now. Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Thank you.
And I put
I
it on
was confused there.
1.5 times speed, so that way.
All right, let's try that. Here's the clip that Denzel was talking about. We're gonna try and stream that here. And
Sure.
I think you might need to press play maybe because it's coming from your computer.
Yeah, let me just
My entire life. That's the worst idea you ever had in your entire life. You just mad you didn't think of it. You want to start a fundraiser with no cause? Cause, nigga. I'm the cause. Cause I want a house. Cause I want a yacht. Cause I want to get this guap, nigga. That's the cause. You watch a lot of gangster movies, right? I seen all of them. That's how I know what to do. Okay. How many of them have a happy ending? Yeah. Okay, but see, that's how I know it's gonna work, right? Because I seen all the mistakes they made. And I'm not gonna make them same mistakes. See, I'm gonna do everything the smart way. Riley, I'm gonna tell you everything that's about to happen if you do this and how bad this is gonna end. First of all, stop right there. Every time I want to do something, you tell me what's going to happen first. And then that's what happens. And you always ruin the endings and stuff, man. I'm sick of it. I want to be surprised this time. So no matter how bad it is, you don't want to hear it. Nope. Because it's really bad. Hey, spoiler alert, nigga. Didn't you hear me? Keep it to yourself. Here. Good luck. Thanks. That still kind of spoiled it, though. The second...
I love that.
Yeah, it's a constant thing between them two, and I think it's absolutely hilarious. But I feel like that's really how INTJs are like in real life. It's like, I know what's going to happen. I'm trying to help you by sharing this with you. You think I'm being a jerk and all of that, and sometimes people just don't want to take their advice, and you're like, ah. So yeah.
Yeah, that is really, really funny. Thank you for pulling that up. And next time, if I have the same computer problem, I'll have you host the video clips because they
No
worked
problem.
fine on your end. So let's go to our next character. This next character is Lisbeth Salander from The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. This was a really famous New York Times bestselling book series called the Millennium Trilogy. And Lisbeth Salander is the main character of the Millennium Trilogy by Stieg Larsson. Known for her legendary hacking skills, she takes on the job of working alongside Mikkel Blomkvist to solve mysteries. Lisbeth had a severely traumatic and violent childhood and was declared a danger to herself and others by the court at age 13. Driven by a desire for knowledge and justice, Salander fights against her past and people's misconceptions to make the world a better place. So again, you can see here, but just by looking at Lisbeth Salander, she doesn't have that I wear a suit and tie. I mean, like that really professional look that a lot of people assume that INTJs are likely to have. What you can see with her, the way she dresses, the way she looks, is she's trying to keep people away and make them intimidated because there's a motive for it, which is that she's had this really traumatic childhood, a lot of violence in her childhood, and this her way, one of her ways of protecting herself. But if you read the books or if you've watched the movies, the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo movies, then what you'll notice with her is that she has this uncanny ability to understand what's going on beneath the surface in various situations, and she's highly strategic, and she's good at creating like a long-term plan for defeating the bad guys essentially, and she usually can grasp things faster than other people in the situations. One thing, there weren't a lot of clips online that I could find, but the one I did find is a little bit rough, so I want to put out like a trigger warning if you might not want to watch it if you feel like it might bother you in some way. But basically, what's happening in this clip is she was declared by the court unfit to take care of herself because they saw her as a danger to herself or others. And so what happened is she was put under the not the conservatorship, but the authority of someone from the government. But this person used their position of power to sexually assault her for this long period of time. But while this is happening, she comes up with a strategy to defeat this person and get what she wants, which is freedom from this person. And so what you're going to see her here is her confronting this individual who has been assaulting her and taking back her freedom. But she's doing it, and the reason I'm showing it is that she's created this big plan for making it impossible for him to to get in the way of her having her freedom back. And I think it demonstrates the intuition as well as the extroverted thinking nature of INTJs. They can, even in difficult situations, come up with these really complex strategies to get what they want. It just may take a while for them to do it. So here's that clip. And again, if you might find it a bit violent. And so just go ahead and you can leave the stream for a minute if you feel like you'd rather not watch it.
Look at me. Once you can sit again, which could be a while, I admit, we're going to go to my bank and tell them that I alone have access to my money. No. After that, you will never contact me again. Each month, you will prepare a report of a meeting we will never have. In it, you'll describe how well I'm doing, how sociable I'm becoming. Then, you will negotiate with the court to have my declaration of incompetence lifted. If you fail, this video will spread across the internet like a virus. No. And if anything should happen to me, if I get run over by a car, if you run me over with a car, this will upload automatically. Not that you understand. Ooh, Gabardini. I'm taking the keys to this apartment because I'll be checking on you. And if I find a girl in here with you, whether she came of her own free will or not. No, not the video. I'll kill you. Do you doubt anything I've said? Do you doubt what's in the reports that have followed me around all my life? What do they say? If you had to sum it up. They say I'm insane. No, it's okay. You can nod, because it's true. I am insane. Nod. I know it's going to be hard for you to abide by my rules. The abstinence part most of all. So I'm going to make it easier for you.
Okay, don't worry, we're not going to show what happens next. But she just puts a tattoo on his chest that says that he's a rapist, essentially. So that will make it harder for him to assault anyone in the future.
Oh,
So,
okay. I thought she was about to do something different.
I could tell by your face. I was like, I bet he thinks that she's going to
Castrate.
do a surgical procedure. So that was a little rough, and I'm sorry if it, like, again, if it was hard for anyone to watch. But what's happened here is she's been in this really bad situation. She has no freedom, but she's incredibly smart. And again, she's this incredible hacker. And the government has relied on her to find this information on people. And she uses this ability to gather information and to, hunt down criminals and all these things. She uses her intuition to come up with this plan that can't fail, which is getting this guy to remove her declaration of incompetence and report that she's doing wonderfully and that she's a very stable, emotionally healthy individual. Now, so yeah, she's a great INTJ female, and she also has that INTJ desire for justice. So a lot of people, again, we've talked about this many times, how INTJs often get cast as villains. But they often tend to have a strong desire for justice and certain very particular values that they will do anything to defend in situations like this. And in her case, and throughout the books and the movies, her desire for justice is what guides her. But she has if you were to talk to her, she has this very like no nonsense, direct, cold exterior, but on the inside she's very driven to protect women, protect people who've been trafficked or people who've been through violent situations. So great fictional character if you want an INTJ female to watch on the big screen. All right, so next who is our next character? Have you seen that movie, Denzel?
I hadn't. No.
Oh, okay. All right, so this next one, Fitzwilliam Darcy, Mr. Darcy from Pride and Prejudice. And let's take a look at him. He is a wealthy young English gentleman who owns a large estate and whom every mother wants their daughter to marry, mostly because he's very wealthy. He falls in love with Elizabeth Bennet, but struggles to reconcile his love for her with the expectations about class and social status prevalent in his time. So, anyone who is a big literary nerd will love the story Pride and Prejudice, and particularly the story of Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy. But in our first clip, you'll see how most INTJs feel when they have to go to a big social gathering. In this first clip, you'll see him going to a party, and you can tell in kind of a funny way how INTJs usually feel when they have to go to parties. Let's go ahead and start that. Don't worry, this is gonna end.
Lie still. I've never.
Good of you to come.
So which of the painted peacocks is Aunt Mr. Bingley?
Well, he's on the right, and on the left is his sister.
And the person with the quizzical brow?
That is his good friend, Mr. Darcy.
He looks miserable, poor.
Okay, so that is going so slowly and badly. I'm trying to think if there's any better way to do the video streaming that's not quite so choppy.
It might be the best we can do for right now.
Yeah,
So,
we may just have to go through with it.
yeah.
Let's see.
That is his good friend, Mr. Darcy.
He looks miserable, poor soul.
Miserable he may be, but poor he most certainly is not.
Tell me.
10,000 a year. And he earns half of Derbyshire.
The miserable half.
Okay, so that was a terrible, terribly laggy scene. So my apologies. But the next one is where he asks Elizabeth Bennet to marry him, and it is probably the most insulting engagement proposal you'll ever see. But you'll see what happens with INTJs often. They will voice their criticisms of something quite openly without realizing that it could be taken the wrong way, especially if they're they haven't had a lot of experience socially. So we might say in this case, their social status is so different. He has very high social status and hers is much lower. And so he's voicing all his issues with their social status differences before he asks her to marry him. And he doesn't see what's wrong with that at all. And it's just an example of how INTJs can sometimes come to someone with very good intent, but then they'll voice these criticisms and not understand and the other person that they're speaking to. And so let me go ahead and play this clip so you can see.
Vain and I can bear it no longer. These past months have been a torment. I came to Rosings with the single object of seeing you. I had to see you. I have fought against my better judgment, my family's expectation, the inferiority of your birth, my rank and circumstance, all these things, and I'm willing to put them aside and ask you to end my agony.
I don't understand.
I love you. Most ardently. Please do me the honor of accepting my hand.
Sir, I appreciate the struggle you have been through, and I am very sorry to have caused you pain. Believe me, it was unconsciously done.
Is this your reply?
Yes, sir.
Are you laughing at me?
No.
Are you rejecting me?
I'm sure that the feelings which, as you've told me, have hindered your regard will help you in overcoming it.
Might I ask why with so little endeavour at civility I am thus repulsed?
And I might as well inquire why, with so evident a design of insulting me, you chose to tell me that you like me against your better judgment.
Okay, so he's telling her, well, I've thought about it and I can bear it no longer, even though the inferiority of your birth and all these issues with your family and all these things are there, I still want to marry you. And so she's insulted by his proposal because he's pointing out all these problems with her before he's saying, I love you. I can't live, I can't live without you. Please marry me. And this is something that can show up with particularly less mature INTJs, where they just voice their criticisms to something and their thought process leading to a decision, and then they explain their decision, and the other person is like, "Wow, that was really critical. Why did you have to say that?" And but to them, they're just extroverting their thinking. They're putting out their thought process in order to um, explain their decision, but it just sounds really insulting or brusque to the other person. And so I think that he's a great example of that. And throughout the movie or the books, if you read the books by Jane Austen, you'll see that he eventually learns to express himself better and to have more empathy for her situation and things like that. But he's a really fun INTJ fictional character, and I think a lot of literary people will enjoy. And let's move on to the next character, unless you have some thoughts, Denzel.
No, that was great. That was really great explanation. I mean, I think Jamila just said the same thing. But yeah, that was really well done.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm feeling really bad about how bad the clips are and my computer issues, but well, hopefully they're still clear enough. So our next character is Ender or Andrew Wiggin from Ender's Game, the book or the movie. Ender Wiggin is the main protagonist from Orson Scott Card's 1985 science fiction novel Ender's Game. He is the third child of his parents, and is thus bullied and ostracized at school because in the setting, it's kind of really bad to be a third child. Like, no one would have a third child. He's also bullied by his older brother, Peter. However, his intelligence and strategic abilities earn him a place at Battle School, an Earth-orbiting space station that trains child prodigies, with the goal of finding the leader who can win the war between Earth and the Formics. So, if you haven't read Ender's Game, I would urge everyone to read it. It's such an amazing book, and he is the perfect INTJ character because not only is he highly strategic and incredibly insightful about situations, he is also insightful about the deeper meaning of what's going on around him, and he's a great example of an INTJ at their best. He's good at getting things done, at making plans and being a leader, but he's also very conscience driven. So he can take charge of really complex situations and manage them and direct people in order to reach an overall strategy or objective, but he also has a really good heart and really cares about the decisions that he's making, how they impact other people. And in Battle School, he's one of the only people who actually questions why the Earth is trying to defeat the Formics, which are these kind of ant-like alien creatures on another planet. He has a moral dilemma with their fight to defeat this Formic planet. But in the clips that you're going to see, first you'll see what's happening is that he is leading his team in a practice where he has to try to defeat the enemy. And this is all a game. It's all a practice. It's all staged. None of it's real. And in the second scene, he believes he's okay. And also, spoiler alert, you will find out something pretty pivotal if you watch this. So if you're curious about this but don't want to know what happens, go ahead and exit for a little bit and come back. But in the second scene, he believes he's doing another practice. But what happens is he's actually defeated the the planet where the Formics are, and destroyed it. But it was staged by everyone in authority as a game and not something that was real. And so you'll see not only his strategic abilities in these scenes, but you also see the conscience that is very powerful with really healthy INTJs. So let me go ahead and play those scenes. Hopefully they're not too choppy.
They're waiting.
Maybe they think we come in peace.
I don't think Mazer intends for us to find a diplomatic solution.
What's he waiting for? Just give him a minute.
Ender, what do we do? Ender, the enemy's gate
is down.
Petra, you're up.
They're spread too wide for a chain reaction.
She's right. Just let him follow his instincts.
All battle groups deploy drones. Protect your carriers. Alive, your Squadron 5. Engage.
This is suicide.
Oh crap. They're swarming.
Slump's enough for you now, Petra?
Once I fire, I need time to recharge.
Understood. Just go for the center. Fire now! She did it.
Ender. Thank you. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Thank God for you, son.
Why are these images in the program?
Ender. You won.
What do you mean we won? I beat him. He runs the simulations. He said it was a game.
It was them or us, Ender. There was no other way. With this victory, you've won all future battles. You destroyed them. For all of us.
Seems like the stream stopped.
Okay, well we can just keep going because the scene's almost over, and then once they release the copyright claim, it'll still show up.
Sounds good.
And
Stay away from me! You lied!
son, we were afraid if we told you, you
You
might.
what, refuse to play? I've killed an entire species.
They would have done the same to us.
No, they waited. What were they waiting for?
Who cares? We lost 1,000 men on the transporters you abandoned.
I abandoned them in order to win.
Yes! And they died proudly for us!
They might not have died at all. If I'd known it was real, I would have...
What? Called for a dialogue? They can't even speak.
Watched them. What were they thinking? Were they building an army for a second invasion? Or simply preparing to defend
Ender,
themselves
stop.
from us? They came to Earth to establish a colony. We chased them away, and in 50 years, they never returned.
Makes no difference now.
I will bear the shame of this genocide forever.
No. You will be remembered as a hero.
I will be remembered as a killer!
It was us or them.
And you're sure we've killed every last one of them?
I saw their whole planet destroyed.
How do you know there was another colony or another queen out there?
We won! That's all that matters.
No. The way we win matters.
Okay, so we might need to give it a minute because what's happening is thank you, Chris. What's happening is that the stream is getting momentarily disrupted by YouTube because we're playing a short clip. We are following the guidelines, and they will release that segment so that everyone can see it in a little while. But they have to make sure that we're not using copyrighted clips in a way that goes against their guidelines. So this happened last week, and sometimes it will happen when we're playing these short clips. And I know
On
probably no
Facebook,
one's
it's not doing that, right?
Huh?
On Facebook, it's not doing that though, right?
Yeah, usually on Facebook it is still streaming. And then once YouTube releases the claims, then that whole segment will be shown. So later on, if people watched this like in a week or something, they would see everything that just happened and what we're saying now. So I'm gonna just let everyone know I should be coming back up in a few minutes. Yeah, these fictional character streams are so fun and they're so interesting, but that is the downside to doing them, is the showing the clips. YouTube isn't sure at first whether we're breaking their guidelines or not.
Yeah.
And then, they have a whole process you have to go through, and then they will release the claims. So let me just make sure, if someone can give us a heads up. Let me just make sure it's all streaming okay on Facebook real quick. Sorry, everybody.
It's all good.
Sorry, Denzel. Let's see. Just see if we're streaming there. Okay. Yep, we're still streaming on Facebook. Okay. All right. So as soon as we get to where we're streaming on YouTube, we can continue. Let me just see if we're still having issues with that.
Jamila says that it's back.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Jamila. All right, so one of the things that you see in the clips that we just showed, and I know some of you might not have been able to see it all, is when Andrew Wiggin is faced with this big challenge. Everyone's like, why isn't he doing something? Why is he going so slow? And he's just staring for a while. And that's one thing that you'll notice with INTJs is they need time to assess the situation and really come up with their strategy. They aren't people who just jump right into a chaotic situation and immediately move. That would be more common with an ESTP or even an ENTJ. Who has higher extroverted sensing. But for INTJs, they need to map out the situation mentally and then jump into action. And as you can, if later on, if you watch this, if you weren't able to see that scene today, what you will see is that there's all this stuff happening and everyone's trying to rush him and he's just quiet. And a lot of times it can look like INTJs are just not doing anything, but what they really are, they're trying to formulate their plan and formulate their strategy. And then once they take action, it's like they've got it all figured out. And it's usually a really smart strategy. And then in the second scene, what you might have missed is him confronting his leaders that had staged this whole battle as a game. He finds out it's not a game, that he's actually destroyed this whole entire species, and he's very upset by that. And his leader says, it doesn't matter, we won. And he says, but the way we win matters. And for INTJs at their best, they care about winning. They are very objective, goal-oriented people, but they also balance that with integrity and that knowledge that the way they win or the way they go after their goals also matters. And one difference between healthy versus unhealthy INTJs and even ENTJs is unhealthy NTJs tend to just go full speed ahead towards their objective, and it's more about winning. But healthy NTJs know that the integrity that they have and the way that they go after their objectives is also equally important. Any thoughts, Denzel, before we move on to the next character?
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say that was really. I saw the movie years ago, but man, that made me once again want to watch it, because I think that was definitely a great example of an INTJ utilizing all 4 of the functions in alignment. He had the plan, and he was also thinking things through. But then he also was very good with delegation, which is where the extroverted thinking of the INTJ comes in. After he thought the thing through, then he's like, okay, you do this. Hey, what's the status on this? And then that's almost like a little bit of multitasking that comes in with extroverted sensing at the same time. And then the introverted feeling came in with later on, like, no, but this was not in alignment with like my conscience. Like, yeah, we won the TE like win, right? Woohoo, whatever. But the FI was not in alignment with that win. I feel wrong because I didn't really fully get to decide on this if I'm ready to commit genocide. Things could have changed, and like he really didn't feel right about that. And to him, it wasn't about like going down in history as a winner. It was about like, no, like, do I feel right? And it doesn't even matter if people like look at me as like a winner and all that. Like, I'm looking at myself, like, I committed genocide. I did not wait. And even if I was forced into this situation, it's still me who has blood on my hands, and I don't like this. And I think that's where like the FI tertiary can really show up for the INTJ, who's often looked at as just very cold and cynical. So yeah.
Yeah, a lot of times INTJs do look very cold, and people, because again, like, is it with like the Mr. Darcy scene? He's like voicing all these criticisms to his marriage with his potential of getting married to Elizabeth, but then he's like, "I love you." He has a good heart. He's just terrible at expressing it. Or even Huey Freeman, has a good heart. He cares. He's just very blunt and straightforward and a little bit morbid in the way he expresses himself. And what you'll find with INTJs is that they're capable of just as much kindness as any other type. But they tend to have this kind of cold, blunt exterior that people misinterpret it as being mean or uncaring or insensitive, but deep down INTJs often do have a more sensitive side. And then Chris, you asked the question, is INTJ system 1 defined by Daniel Kahneman in his book Thinking Fast and Slow? Wow, that is a really good question.
Yeah.
So everyone uses system 1 and system 2. I think I'd have to think on that question, honestly, because it's been like 3 years since I've read that book, and on the like on the spot, I am trying to think about how I would explain that. Have you ever read that book, Denzel?
Yeah, I have the book, and I think it's also did it come out 3 years ago, or did we just happen to both read it around the same time?
I literally have it right here.
Wow.
Like, I mean, it's a really good book, and
Yeah,
I remember I think that at their best, INTJs. So I think system 1 is like really, really prefrontal cortex type thinking, like strategy, in-depth thinking that requires a lot more energy expenditure. And okay, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm pulling again from several years ago of reading that. And then system 2 is nomadic memory, or automatic thinking that kind of we don't have to put as much energy into. So in Thinking Fast and Slow, they talk a lot about how, like, if you start your day and you're doing all this heavy thinking, then at the end of the day, you're more likely to, I don't know, splurge on junk food or make these shortcut thinking decisions because you're operating more in system 2. And I would say that extroverted thinking by its nature is system 1. So anything that the TJ mode of thinking. But I would say that introverted intuition alone is not as much systems 1 thinking. It's more of a calm, contemplative type of unhurried thinking. But again, I'd have to trust my answer too much on this, because I'd have to read. That would make a good blog article. So I'd have to read the book again and really think it over before I answered too much on that. But it's a good question.
Yeah.
Thank you for asking that, Chris.
For sure.
All right, so let's look at our next character, who is not as great as Dr. Wiggin. Let's look at Claire Underwood from House of Cards. So Claire Underwood is an American politician and the director of the nonprofit Clean Water Initiative, an organization that supplies water filters and similar devices to impoverished countries. At least that's what she's doing at the beginning of the House of Cards series. Claire is incredibly passionate about the initiative, but she'll go to any lengths, sometimes evil ones, to win. She's constantly scheming and strategizing to gain ground for her nonprofit while simultaneously advancing her or her husband's careers. Now, I haven't seen much of House of Cards. So I'm going to have Denzel explain this character, because this was one of his picks for INTJ, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this character, Denzel.
Yes. So, admittedly, I've only seen a fragment of House of Cards as well. Like I've seen my funny enough INTJ old housemate. She used to watch it a lot, and I would like sit down and watch. Like I think I've watched maybe like a little bit like 5 episodes with her. And I saw enough of Claire Underwood to be able to be like, okay, yeah, she's definitely like an INTJ. But without spoiling, everything I'm thinking about might be like a spoiler. I think that the description that you have here though is really good. Though. It's like she she and her husband is an ENTJ, um, uh, and they're both the types of people that are striving to get up ahead and to win. You know, and they both want to climb the ranks, and they both do what is necessary to get ahead. And the way that they're doing it involves a lot of strategy, a lot of scheming, and a lot of being able to create illusions for people. And I think that's like also like a very NI thing. It's like, oh, let's have the people think this when in actuality, this is really what's happening behind the scenes. But this is the story that we're going to present to them because it's going to warp their perception of what's happening so they don't know what's actually happening. And that's going to be to our advantage. But also at the same time, you see a lot of times where they're doing things for everybody's advantage as well. So they're not all bad either. But yeah, you can definitely see that they like, at least with Claire, she's trying to push herself forward more. And she thinks through things like very carefully. It's the best way I could put it with the limited amount of knowledge that I've seen and without spoiling stuff that I've seen. Yeah.
Yeah, so one of the things that I think that's a great explanation, and I have seen some of the show, and one of the things that I have a friend who watches the show said is that she has some really good goals. Some of her goals they're not all evil. She's just not like hungry for power for the sake of power and nothing else. Although I do think she's very power hungry. She does care about her nonprofit aims, but I think she believes that because she has these um, positive humanitarian aims that she can get away with whatever she wants in any other capacity because the ends justify the means. And that's another sign of an unhealthy NTJ is unhealthy NTJs can have this very ends justifies the means approach to life. They're like, well, I'm doing some good things. So if I'm doing all these evil things over here, I think, it balances out. Like overall, I'm doing more good than bad, so I can get away with it. Or if their overall goal, if they see that as a good goal, then they may take all kinds of moral shortcuts in order to reach that goal. And
Right.
you'll see that in like the scene that we have for Claire Underwood. One of her ex-employees comes to her and she's on maternity. She's pregnant, and she was supposed to have a year's worth of paid maternity or a year's worth of paid health insurance and I don't know, unemployment or whatever. I'm not, not sure after she left her job. And Claire's response is so cold and so callous, but in the end, you see she has an overarching goal. So let's go ahead and play that scene.
Blue Cross said my insurance was canceled.
Oh?
The severance package gave me health coverage for up to a year.
That sounds right.
So there must be some kind of mistake.
Well, you'll have to talk to the insurance company.
I did. They said it was terminated. They can't reinstate it without the employer's approval.
And you want me to get involved?
There's medication that I need that I can't get unless it goes through my HMO.
Oh, I'm well aware. I reviewed your records.
What?
You signed a consent form.
No, I didn't. You forged my signature?
Did a Mrs. Applebaum pay you a visit?
You realize what you're doing is
civil, not criminal.
Have you thought this out? Because when we go to court...
You mean 6 months from now? You're expecting in 4, no? That's 4 months without the medicine you need.
I'm willing to let your child wither and die inside you if that's what's required. But neither of us wants that. Now tell me, am I really the sort of enemy you want to make? But here's the alternative. This office, this staff, $22 million a year could be yours. The CWI could be yours, and you and me, we wash our hands of each other.
Buy me?
No. When we first met, I promised to empower you. I'm fulfilling that promise.
How do I get screwed?
You don't. I resign, you take my place.
No strings?
None.
Okay, so that's kind of a rough scene in some ways. So yeah, she's really, at first you're like, wow, she is such a horrible, evil person, telling this woman that she doesn't care about her baby or her health. And then she just throws out this supposedly golden opportunity. Again, the stream's unavailable. This golden opportunity for this person. And she's like, look, aren't you happy that I'm giving you this great opportunity? I just told you I don't care if your baby dies, but I'm giving you this amazing opportunity, so that makes it all okay, right? And that's one thing, again, you'll notice with unhealthy NTJs is that they have this approach. It's like, hey, overall, I'm giving you the resource you need. So who cares if I'm not a nice person? I gave you the resource that you need. And I know that we're having more issues on YouTube with the stream, but it'll come back soon. Hopefully someone can let us know when that happens. But for anyone who's watching on Facebook, yeah, that's an NTJ at their worst. That's the typical INTJ villain. But Claire does believe that she's a good person because she does believe that ultimately what she wants to give the world is going to help more people than it's going to hurt. But she just goes about it in the worst possible way. What do you think, Denzel?
Yeah, I don't know. There's just something maybe there's just something wrong with me, but I really like that. I was like, wow. But I think it's really competent, the way that she was, like, even the question that she asked, like, like, oh, like, did you hear from, like almost like diverting when she's like, did you forge it? She didn't answer that question, but she instead asked this question. And yeah, it just went back to the whole, like, it's for your own good. I don't know. But anyway, I think that, yeah, this is an example of not necessarily like, oh yeah, model INTJ that you should follow, but understanding an INTJ's mind. Not every INTJ that you run into is going to be a very healthy one that's really looking out for you in that kind of way. And so some of the examples that we presented today might not be like, the most model type, but it still shows a peek into how their mind works. And I think with Claire, you're able to see like how, yeah, she felt like, well, I'm going to do this seemingly petty thing, as in forging your signature and doing this and having this whole thing. But in actuality, you don't really want this. If you just do what I want you to do, which I think is better for everybody, well, then everybody wins. So let's just make that. And I don't know, like, even the way that she said, like, am I really the type of enemy that you want to make? I do not know. I don't know. There's just clearly some admiration that I have for those types of characters that, yeah, it's obviously like personal, but at the end of the day, you still can understand like where the functions are at play. And even with that FI, it's interesting too, because the FI is still coming out. It's just unhealthy. With Claire's FI, it's mainly fixated on what she wants to happen. So FI isn't always about like, oh yeah, like, I'm moral and I'm going with my values. FI at its most basic is, what are my desires? What do I want? And then TE is like, I'm going to go and get it. And so FI, when it's developed and when they add like more nuance to it and they start really like, expanding it, then it's like, okay, what do I want? What are the moral implications that it might have? And is it in alignment with who I am as a person, everything? And then after all of that, is now molded, then TE is like, yeah, there's a lot of parameters here, but sure, look, this is how we can attain this without stepping over these parameters.
Yeah, absolutely. And if any of you are watching and you're not sure like what that means, so FI is just introverted feeling. And so it's part of so each personality type has a thinking side and a feeling side. And for INTJs, their feeling side is introverted feeling, which is again like what Denzel said. It's like what matters to me, what's important to me, what do I want, and exactly as he was saying, developed introverted feeling cares about the ethics of something and cares about your motivations for doing something. An unhealthy introverted feeling is just what do I want, and that's the most important thing, and it can be very selfish. And what you can see that in that clip with Claire Underwood, she's just like, well, I want to go I work at this other place and have you run this section, so therefore it is the right thing. And she kind of believes herself to be helping this woman. She thinks she's the good guy in that situation. Yeah, if you want examples of really good, healthy INTJs, definitely read about Ender Wiggin, read the Ender's Game series. Even the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo series, she's kind of a mixed bag. Like, she's a good person, but she has some trauma. A lot of the other characters we've talked about today are really amazing examples of healthy INTJs, but Claire Underwood is a great example of that villain INTJ. So let's talk about our next character. Ray from the Promised Neverland. I love this character. Ray is one of the orphans and students at Grace Field House, a farm and school that is hiding many dark secrets. He consistently gets perfect scores and is known for his high intellectual abilities. While he may appear blunt, distant, and calculating, he cares for the other orphans and strategizes a dangerous plan to help the orphans escape from Grace Field House. So Ray, when you first watch the show, you're like, wow, this little punk has bad attitude all the time. He's kind of, I didn't think that, but a lot of people did. And I mean, he just seems grumpy and cold and unfeeling and, yeah, not highly likable. But as you get to know him, you realize he spent his entire life working towards this long range plan of helping the orphans in Gracefield House escape. And so in the scene, I'm trying to decide whether I should play it or not. I know we haven't had as many issues with anime scenes as we have with scenes from the other shows. So what's your vote, Denzel? Should we play the clip or should we skip it in case it goes out again?
I think we should play it because at the end of the day, we're still going to be able to get rid of the claims, and I feel like more people watch post stream rather than during the stream, right? So now
yeah, let's try it and let's hope that it stays on. So in this particular scene, Ray is talking to one of the other characters named Emma, and Emma has been trying to figure out a way. She's I believe an ENFJ. What do you think, Denzel?
I think that she is ENFJ, especially in the manga, but I think that the anime portrays her more as an ENFP.
It's kind of the anime. I feel like they mess with the characters a little bit. Mm-hmm. But she's got this actually really good plan for helping the orphans escape. But then what you'll see from him is that INTJ planning, which is like taking it one step further. And he even talks about, I've been making this plan for 7 years. And so if you want to see an example of INTJ in action and kind of working with someone else, it's a great example. Let me go ahead and pull that up.
Reminds me of Huey.
Let's run away. I came to talk about that.
I wanted to talk too. The past 2 months, we couldn't communicate since we were worried Mom would see.
Yeah. I didn't want her to know our true intentions, so I stayed quiet.
True intention?
Just a quick caveat. When they say mom, they're not talking about their actual mother. Mom is the name of the woman who runs the orphanage.
Right. Mom's really cautious. Even though the two of us weren't doing anything, she never stopped watching us. But that's something we can use against her. If she stays focused on me, then I can keep her eyes away from the other kids.
Dawn and Gilda, huh?
Yeah. I left them in charge. They're training the others, and making preparations.
How far along are you?
It's all ready. There's warm clothing, supplies, and food. We can leave whenever.
That's impressive. But how will you escape?
Oh, don't worry. I have it all planned. Let's run tomorrow morning. Before you get shipped out.
Hold it. That's dangerous. Things are a lot different now. The escape should be at night when it's easier to hide. Just hear me out. You should sit down. Okay then. There are two problems here. First, Mom's watchful eyes. She's always watching us and tends to be holding one of the younger ones during the day. And at night, she puts the babies to sleep in her room. In order to make sure that everyone escapes here, we'll have to separate Mom from all the little ones. Next thing is the cliff that's past the wall. We're not able to climb down it. If we're getting out, we'll have to take the only bridge that's available. I'm sure there's already security. And once they know we're gone, the guards are going to rush over. It's at the edge of the headquarters. Those monsters are going to be all over the place. Knowing that, what will you do? I have the answer right here.
Okay, so that clip was actually supposed to be longer. So part of it cut out at the end, but he has this entire plan for how they can start a fire in the orphanage, and so the orphans can escape. And I don't want to say much more than that because it would give spoilers. But he's been planning this out for 7 years. His kid is, I don't remember how old he is in the series, maybe 12. I'm not 100% sure, but he's young.
12.
Yeah, I think it was 12.
Yeah, I think it was 12. Yeah.
But he's spent, from the age of 5 till now coming up with this in-depth plan. And he's like, yeah, your plan's really good. But and then he's like puts all that detailed extroverted thinking into it, that we need to think about the fact that there's a cliff here, and we need to think about the fact that in the daytime she's going to be keeping an eye on us, and he's got everything worked out to the finest detail. And that's one thing that you'll notice with INTJs is that when they have a plan and they actually are in the process of execution, they've got the plan, and then they have the contingency plan, and then they have the contingency plan after that, so that if anything falls through, they can go to plan B or plan C. And he very aptly demonstrates that in that particular series. He's a great example, again, if you want to see a healthy INTJ, an INTJ who may not at first glance seem like a nice person, but who actually is very caring and committed to the other people in his life. So those are all the ones we're going to be talking about today. And if you miss certain parts because it cut out, just come back. What I'll do is I'll send out a notification on Twitter, on Facebook, and also an email to my INTJ list with the completed video once all the copyright claims have been removed, so that you can see the whole thing with all the clips. And does anyone have any questions before we wrap up today? If you do, go ahead and leave those in the comments. We would love to hear if you have any questions before we go. Denzel, any thoughts from you as we wrap things up?
Not really. I think that this was really fun. It's always nice to show how characters do, like, it's always like argued, kind of like what you said at the beginning, that like, oh, well, fictional characters, you can't really type them. And I understand the argument, but me and you, we always like talk about this. It's like when you watch like a show like the Boondocks, like it's very clear that Riley, Huey's brother, is going to do certain things, and he's going to consistently do certain things that Huey is just never going to do. And it's most likely because the writers are trying to make sure that there's a consistency with each character, and that consistency is an archetype, and usually those archetypes fall into the personality type that we can then pattern out. So yeah, sure. There are sometimes what I would think bad writers who make fake types of characters that cannot really be typed accurately. And then it's like, okay, yeah, sure. But there's a lot of good shows and movies out there that have very great character development. And you can then be able to really narrow down like which of the 16 personality types is the best fit for that character, even though they're fictional. So I'm glad that we were able to like exemplify a lot of that today.
Thank you, Denzel. I think that's a good answer. I think, and then Melissa asked the question, wait, it says you're an INTJ, Susan, but you're an INFJ. So I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail, but about a year and a half ago, as I was working and getting more trainings in type, I started realizing that I had INTJ preferences rather than INFJ preferences, and it was a whole big thing for me because I've been writing about it for a really long time. But I did make a video about that, and I'll try to post that link so that you can see more about that process. But yeah, INTJs and INFJs have a lot in common, and they actually mistype more than one would think. So it's a good question though, because I know it's confusing for a lot of people. Yeah, so we are going to be doing more of these videos. We've only done 2 of the fictional character series. We did ENTJ characters, and today we did INTJ. Next, I think we are going to be doing ENFJ. Are we going to ENFJ?
Yeah, we
Yeah,
can
so
do
next,
it.
awesome. So we'll do ENFJ next, but next time I am going to have a much better computer working. So we won't have as many issues with the streaming being really laggy and the quality being so low. Today was just a complete explosion of technical problems on my end. So
INTJs, please don't hate us for it. It wasn't efficient enough.
I mean, I'm kind of hating. I'm like in the back of my head the whole time, I'm like, oh man, this is just really not the quality I wanted to put out. But these things happen, especially when you're doing any kind of a live stream. So, but next time I'll be on a much better computer. So, join us next time for ENFJ characters. I'll keep you updated on the day and time of when that's going to happen. And Denzel, I'm sure we'll post something when we have that clarified as well. But if you have questions and this is already aired, go ahead and leave those in the comments because I will log on at a later point and try to answer any questions you might have. And if you are not sure what your personality type is and you need a little guidance in that area, I would definitely recommend Denzel. He's an amazing type profiler. Denzel, can you tell people a little bit about what you do and how they can reach you?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you go to denzelmensa.com, you'll be able to see my services in detail over there, and you can book a session with me. If you don't have any availability for the times that I have availability for, then just be sure to email me and title it something like availability issue, or something along the lines that like catch my attention, like, oh, this is a potential client and they live in China, and if I have to wake up at like, I don't know, 4 a.m. and because you really want a session like that bad, it's like, okay, let's just plan this 2 weeks in advance so that I know that I'm going to be waking up at this time in order to have our session. But yeah, pretty much I offer coaching sessions and I offer profiling sessions. So the profiling session is me sitting down with you for about an hour and some change to like 2 hours. Sometimes it's even like a 2-parter session. And it's me getting into detail with what personality type best fits you and why. And then coaching is essentially me helping you to become the best version of yourself, of the best version of how you can show up being the type that you are, and making your life a lot easier, to be honest, helping your relationship with yourself and with other people as well. I do relationship coaching. So like for a lot of people who are like, yeah, I might have like an INTJ husband and we clash heads in this way. And, you're probably an INFP or something like that. I don't know. Then it's like, oh, well, I offer coaching where we can sit down and we can talk about like how to help you two both see the value in each other's functions and seeing where each other is coming from so that you can have a much smoother relationship while still growing. So I offer a lot of stuff like that. And if you just want to like chat, I have clients that literally just do that. Like today, I just had a session 30 minutes before we hopped on today where me and a client, like we hopped on and then she's developing a lot of her extrovert intuition auxiliary. She's an INFP, and we just started chatting about a whole bunch of different things that she's been getting into. And then before you know it, like it was a whole hour just full of great intuitive conversation that she has to reflect on. I have video recordings that only the clients are able to watch. So that way they can, rewatch all the sessions that we do and bring it into like next session. So all that said, yeah, if you want to check me out there, then check me out at denzelmensa.com where you can book that session. And I also have YouTube videos. If you just search Denzel Mensa, then that'll all show up too. And thanks for having me, Susan. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Denzel, and thank you everyone who tuned in. We were really glad you were able to be a part of this, and I'm really excited for the next time when we get to talk about ENFJ characters, because there's so many ENFJ characters. I think we're going to have way more than we could possibly even talk about in one video. So thanks so much, everyone. I hope you all have a great week, and thank you, Denzel, and everyone also for the patience during the technical issues as well. Thank you. We'll see you all next time. Bye, everybody.